Hey, this is another episode of Gen X Amplified, and today we are going to have a fabulous, phenomenal, and fast conversation. Fast as in race cars. That's because I will be having a chat with Erik Moses, who is the president of Nashville Superspeedway, which is the largest concrete-only track in NASCAR. And Erik also happens to be the very first African-American president of a NASCAR track. Now, this is also another special Fabulous Over 40 Fireside Chat edition from our previous LinkedIn Live, and I'm so excited to now bring that conversation directly to you on this podcast. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
We sit between two huge population growths. Baby boomers, our parents, and the millennials, our kids. And so I think the power in our generation is being able to be that bridge between those two generations.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrian Porter.
Welcome to another Fabulous Over 40 Fireside Chat. This is a very special fireside chat, and that's because my featured guest today is blazing a trail and impacting the world stage that is definitely deserves to be celebrated. He is the president of Nashville Superspeedway, which is the largest concrete-only track in NASCAR. And notable, he made history in 2020 when he became the very first African-American president of a NASCAR track in the history of the sport. Now, he's also has many other grand achievements throughout his career that we're going to unpack. So without further ado, please welcome my fabulous over 40 and Gen Exceptional guest, who, just like his namesake, is on a mission to lead all NASCAR fans to the promised land of Nashville for a Cup Series race. The one and only Erik A. Moses. Erik, what is going on, man?
And you know how to bring us in, man. That's that is quite the introduction. I got to live up to a lot on that one. That's I appreciate the love, man. It's so good to be with you. And as you well know from our previous discussions, I am so proud of what you're doing to bring attention to those of us who are in Gen X. I don't like to claim numbers these days, but yeah, Gen X, I will claim.
No, that's all good. I really appreciate you, Erik. And I will tell you, when I first reached out to you to feature you for this fireside chat, and also we talked about this. So for those of you who may or may not know, this is a derivative of an overall series that I launched on LinkedIn, which is called Fabulous Over 40, which is there to spotlight those exceptional people who are 40 and up, who are doing great things that often do not get a lot of light or shine. So I also wanted to make sure that this platform and the Spotlight series, the podcast, Gen X Amplified, Mid-Career Mastery, is here to really help us who are 40 plus to shine and maximize our impact in this world of work, and at the same time really bring a light to the power of age inclusion in the workplace. So Erik, all the things that you're doing, that you have done, which we're going to unpack, is a true testament of being fabulous, over 40 and exceptional. So man, let's get right into it. Can you just start off, particularly right around the ages or the years when you were embarking upon your educational journey, and what made you pursue that path, and then kind of lead us to along that professional journey leading to what you're doing at NASCAR, specifically Nashville Superspeedway?
Sure. I am fortunate to come from a long line of attorneys, and as a young person trying to figure out what I thought I might want to be when I grew up, taking inventory of my skills, capabilities, interests, et cetera, I figured, well, okay, look, I can make a reasonably persuasive argument. I write pretty well. I'm a logical thinker.
Yes.
What does that line up for? Probably being a lawyer. And so, was fortunate to go to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and then right down the road to Duke for law school, and thought that I was going to be an agent, a player agent.
Wow.
I had been to school with a lot of men and women who ended up being able to take their rare talents and turn those into ways to make money for themselves. And I wanted to be someone who was going to be able to look after them, their best interests. We've all heard the horror stories about these folks losing their money, their fortunes, being cheated out of it by unscrupulous advisors, et cetera. Right. And I wanted to protect these people, many of whom were my friends and whose stories and backgrounds I knew and recognized. And so that's kind of how I got started.
Wow, that's great. So now, where are you initially from, and kind of talk about also, you went to Chapel Hill and you went to Duke Law School?
That's right. That's right. People think that's strange.
I was about to say, who do you claim? So are you Tar Heel born, Tar Heel bred? True
yes, and when I'm a Tar Heel, I'll be Tar Heel dead. Yeah, no, my grandmother's brother integrated the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill at the law school in 1951 after a long court battle. So he was one of the first 2 Black men to ever go to that school. Oh, wow. And so that university has always meant a lot to me and my family. Okay. And so it was the only school I applied to, the only school I wanted to go to. While our rivals are right down the road, right. I enjoyed my 3 years there. I know that attending Duke Law School changed my life, and I'm very pleased to be able to claim both those great schools.
Well, that is awesome. I mean, that's a fascinating educational foundation for you, being in that vicinity, having that history in your family. Now, you have a storied history, Erik, when it comes to sports, when it comes to event planning. But let's talk a little bit more about that path with respect to litigation or being an attorney. What was it about the fields that really just fueled you to say, hey, this is what I want to do? In particular, also, because something you just mentioned, you knew you wanted to go to that school. You didn't apply to any other schools, which is rare, but also it's a testament to your vision, your focus, and you exactly knowing what you want to do and where you want to do it. Can you just talk a little bit more about that innate personality that you have?
Yeah, I was someone who was fortunate to have a path very early on.
Yes.
And that path included attending the University of North Carolina. And then in my head, I thought, well, I'll go somewhere a bit more prestigious or more well-known for law school. Didn't know whether that would be Duke or not, right. but thankfully had the opportunity to go there. And like I said, I thought I was going to go into sports entertainment because I've always been someone who was very attracted to the business of sports. Okay. I was reading Sports Illustrated and Variety and all of the publications of the day that looked behind the scenes to tell you more about how business dealings happen in sports entertainment. And I always found that very fascinating. Okay. And so went to Duke, where there was a very well-known sports law professor there, and had the very rare opportunity to sit in while I was a first-year law student on Grant Hill's interview of potential agents. The university, Coach K, and the law school had come up with this process that allowed the student athletes and their parents to vet potential agents. And they knew that myself and a classmate of mine were very interested in the field. And so they allowed us an opportunity to sit in and listen to those pitches and listen to the back and forth and the questions that Grant and his family asked of these folks. And so, that was interesting to do, but it also made clear to me that, and other research I did, that chasing 21-year-old kids around the country to get them to sign with me so I could pay off those law school loans was probably not how I wanted to start my career.
That's all. So Grant Hill, when you were a fly on the wall, or probably more than that, I'm sure, just watching, listening, navigating the conversations, was that literally an aha moment for you, just being in the midst of those type of dealings and those type of conversations and just adding more confirmation to the lane that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I knew it was rarefied air because, Grant comes from such an extraordinary family and he's such an extraordinary individual. Right. He's one of the few who probably wouldn't even need an agent. He could have looked after his own best interests without hiring an agent. And so what became clear to me was that I would be super lucky to sign one person like him in my life. More often than not, athletes and professional athletes are going to be, fortunately or unfortunately, young people who come from backgrounds where they don't have the reference points for business dealings and things of that nature. And so they need more help. And so I knew pretty early on that Yeah, I spent 3 years in law school, 4 years in undergrad. I'm ready to be a professional. I'm ready to do some things. And I don't think that the acquiring and the recruiting of players and of clients is such a big part of that business that I knew that I would likely be spending more time doing that than I would be in boardrooms doing deals. And so I decided instead to start my career in commercial broadcast. So I was an attorney in private practice, buying and selling TV and radio stations after the rules about local ownership had changed.
Okay. And what companies did you start doing that?
So my biggest client at the time was a company out of West Palm Beach, Florida called Paxson Communications.
Okay.
Their founder had started off with a home shopping network, made a bunch of money there, and acquired many dozens of radio stations around the country. And then when I came in as a baby lawyer, we began to sell off those radio stations and buy and acquire television stations, which he used cable access and the must-carry laws of the FCC at that time in order to get on basically the cable systems in most of the major markets around the country. And so that was a lot of fun as a very young lawyer to be buying television stations all around the country. And then later helping him to put a network together, a television network, a family-friendly television network called Pax TV.
Okay.
It was a rare opportunity at such a young age and a young place in my career.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of those clients, because what year would you say that was in?
So this was mid-90s. I was at the law firm between 96 and 2000. And so this was, the internet was still not really a thing. Right. It was starting to be. And so Paxson, we represented Cox Communications, Comcast, and several other individual commercial broadcast owners all around the country. Yeah,
that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because my background, I spent a lot of years in the cable broadcast at HBO back in the early 2000s. And then before that, I'm in internet. So during the time period of mid-90s to the 2000s, the internet, direct to home, was a totally different animal than we are now. So I was just curious to hear your purview based on where you were during that time period. Let's go back. I just thought of something. So Chapel Hill, what year were you there during 93?
That was my graduation gift was a national championship against Michigan in the Fab Five.
That's why
93 was when I graduated.
Okay, that's why I asked, because I know that was a big year for you.
I tell people that was my best sports year of my life. The Cowboys won the Super Bowl. Michael Jordan and the Bulls won the NBA championship. Yes. Carolina won the NCAA championship. Our women's soccer team, which won every single year I was in college, won a national championship, and our football team won the Peach Bowl. I don't think it ever gets better than that in my life. So I cherish 93 for a lot of reasons.
No, I love that. That was actually, so I went undergrad to University of Memphis, Penny Hardaway. So 93 was a big year as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So Eric, let's talk about then, as we're going along this fabulous over 40. At the time, we're talking fabulous over 30 or 20. Your journey into the government sector. What brought you to DC and so started working for state and city government?
Yeah, so I came to DC because I had worked as a second year law student that summer for the Federal Communications Commission and for a commissioner there named Andy Barrett, who, I got to tell you, that was one of the best job experiences I ever had. I tell people that internships can really set you up very nicely for the rest of your career in terms of both the types of things that you want to do and maybe the kinds of things that you don't want to do. Okay. During that opportunity, that summer, I got a chance to meet Bob Johnson from BET, the CEO of AT&T, Ted Turner, Stanley Hubbard, all these people who, like you said, satellite radio was in its infancy. Yes. But they were all coming to the FCC to get the approvals they needed to get those birds in the air and to start those services. And so I was there at the time when all of these kinds of things were happening and had an opportunity, because I had a great mentor, to sit in on many of those meetings and see those discussions and see what it looks like when the titans of industry come to government to ask for things that they need. Yes. Yeah, I can't even imagine. So relationships. So we're going to talk a lot about this during our conversation, especially as we get into the work that you're doing in Nashville, because the premise of this show, this movement, the things that we're doing with Fabulous Over 40, the work that you're doing as a professional, we really want to underscore the value
and the virtues, especially as you get into this season of your professional career, the relationships that you have built along the way, the experiences that you have. You used the word mentor a couple of times. Can you just talk about, Erik, the power of the relationships that you have built, even at this point, before we even get into the XFL, which we're going to talk about, before we even get into Nashville, just the power of the relationships that helped nurture you along this journey?
Oh, I dare to even think about where I would be as a professional, and frankly, personally, without those kinds of people that come into your life and help you to see the potholes before you step in them, and help to provide those insights that come with wisdom from living and doing different things. Started in law school, met a gentleman who was a professor at Duke Law when I was a senior at Chapel Hill, who essentially helped me get off the wait list at Duke and into a top 10 law school, and became a mentor throughout my 3 years of law school there. Then it was a Duke Law alum who was the first female partner at the law firm that I eventually joined, who became my mentor that second year, helped me to get that internship with the FCC, which then led to my opportunity to join the firm that I work for in Washington, D.C., and brought me to D.C. There are people all throughout my career at the law firm. I worked for a junior and senior partner who taught me how to be a lawyer, taught me the things that were really important. And some of those lessons I take with me today in everything I do. And so important to make certain that we are reaching out, building and cultivating relationships with people, and especially as African-American professionals, it can't just be with folks who look like us. Right? Like it's critically important that we make certain that we are cultivating relationships, meaningful relationships with those who have experiences that we don't have backgrounds that are different, and who can actually pull the curtain back for us and show us how things are actually done, and give us that knowledge that we might not come across on our own, or might not come across as quickly on our own. Right.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm glad you said that. Relationships can't all be synonymous. Different cultures, different backgrounds, different educational levels, different ages, obviously. It only adds to the value that you can bring forth into the world and with each other. I tell that all the time. So let's talk about the DC Defenders. XFL, for those of you, can you just, well, I don't want to, I mean, you worked in the league. So can you just talk about the DC Defenders and the XFL and your time there?
Oh man! Until that time, it was that was my dream job. Wow. I had spent the previous 11 years as essentially the sports commissioner in Washington, D.C. Right. Loved it. Loved serving this city where I happen to be right now. Loved working in Washington at a really critical point in the city's growth and development. Getting on the team side and helping to start a brand new league and a brand new team in a city that loves football, but had been suffering for a while with the NFL team here and not really very much in terms of college football in the area was just, it was a dream come true. I had a great partner in Pep Hamilton, who is now the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, and is a son of Howard University, and had played here and coached here. And he was our GM and our head coach, and I was the president of the front office and of the business side. And we worked really well together. And I think that's why we had such success in a very shortened season. But it was great to be able to bring to people a sport that by far is the number one sport in this country. That had some changes and some differences that we were introducing with rule changes, et cetera. So some innovations that people wanted to see, and being able to explain to them why this thing was familiar, but it was going to be innovative and a bit creative, and why they should care. I loved doing that. I loved doing it in the nation's capital. And I loved being able to work with young men on our team to help them build their brands along with us as we were building the brand of the team. It was a great experience.
Wow, you just mentioned, so build the brands of those individuals in addition to the team. Can you just quickly just unpack like that dynamic, and why was that so important at the time?
Critically important because, unlike the Commanders, the Washington Commanders,
that's right.
now, the Defenders had no name recognition. Yes. We had no brand equity because we were a brand new team. And so we were relying in many ways on our players, as most teams do. So Cardell Jones from Ohio State University was the first quarterback to win the college football playoff national championship, was our quarterback. He had a great brand. Ohio State is one of the biggest schools in terms of number of alumni in the country, and their second largest alumni group in the country was here in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So we leaned into the relationship with Cardell and tried to help him build his brand in the community, leveraging what he did in college to really help the Defenders brand grow. But there were other young men who had played high-level college football and even spent some time in the NFL that we were also helping to focus them and their efforts and their achievements in the community so that they could have a real connection with fans, because we were building a fan base from scratch. And I think it's really important, not only for athletes and entertainers to be mindful of their brand, building it, cultivating it, maintaining it, but it's critically important for us, and especially those of us, I think, in our age range.
Yes.
Because your brand speaks for yourself. It is the thing that will allow people, before they see your resume, before they see your CV, to have a sense of who you are and what you bring to the table. And it's something that I'm obviously very mindful of, and I think we all should be.
You are preaching what I love to preach, and I love it. That's why you're on the show. In addition to being Fabulous Over 40, you said so eloquently, it's the first thing that people even witness or experience before they see your CV, before they see who you are. And then even after that, it's the sum of all those micro experiences that you have with every individual along the way, both visually, vocally, what have you. So I'm so glad you said that. All right. So XFL, how long were you there? And then tell us about what happened to lead you to why you're here.
So almost exactly a year.
Yeah.
I started in April of 2019.
Okay.
And we shut the league down in April of 2020, 5 games through our 10-game regular season. Because, as everybody knows, of a global pandemic,
right?
That almost laid waste to our hospitality and leisure industry, and certainly stopped most sports and entertainment events and places and public gathering places for a very long time. And so, as a brand new startup league, we weren't able to overcome that. So that opportunity ended in April of 20. In June of 20, I received an email from a friend and a colleague who sits on a board of directors for the Military Bowl, which is an NCAA bowl game that I helped to give birth to here in Washington when I was sports commissioner. Okay. And he said, "Erik, I'm trying to find you." I was working at a friend's law firm, had my own consulting firm that I'd started up. And he said, "I'm trying to find you. If this is you, reach out to me. I have an idea I want to share." So I call him. He says, "I have a crazy idea, but don't say anything until I explain all of it to you." So I said, "Okay, let's hear what this is." And he explained to me how, he was the president of Dover Motor Speedway up in Dover, Delaware, and that the company owned a speedway, a super speedway in Nashville that had been closed down for 10 years. But they had recently made a deal with NASCAR to bring a race back to that space and needed to open it back up, and they needed someone to lead that effort. And he thought about me, knowing what I had done in Washington, D.C., and wanted to find out whether I was interested. And that is what kind of, 6 to 8 weeks later, as I call, we had a 6 to 8 week courtship where he taught me a lot about the NASCAR ecosystem and the sport, things that I wasn't acutely aware of. I shared more about my experiences, what I had done in my career, et cetera. And by the time that courtship was over, we both decided that it made good sense for me to join and become president of the Nashville Superspeedway.
All right. That's such a powerful story. We have to unpack that a little bit more. So this friend, and when was the last time that you really had like a really in-depth, long conversation with him before this conversation? Like,
it's funny that you asked that. So, and we weren't really very close. I mean, we were colleagues. He had invited me and everyone else on the board up to the Monster Mile in Delaware for their Cup Series race, the Dryden 400, in October of 2019. Now, remember, the XFL's first season is starting in February of 2020, and our game is the first game of the new season for the new league. Right. So I had just a little bit of pressure, as you can imagine. So I had always heard that NASCAR was really great at fan engagement and sponsor activation. So I got with my PR and marketing guy and said, let's drive up to Delaware and go to this race and steal some good ideas that we can hopefully employ for our brand new startup team and league. So I had seen Mike Titoin is his name. I had seen Mike at the race in October of 19. And then we'd I'd invite him to a Defenders game, which never ended up happening because we closed down. Right. But that was really the last time. It had been, 6-8 months previous that we had any kind of substantive conversation.
So the reason why I wanted to ask is going back to the power of relationships and the power of your brand and the power of the impact that you make along your journey that you never know that may come back and give you dividends. So I'm sure it may have come up in the conversation that you had with Mike. So what was it about him remembering you at that moment, at that time, and understanding that you were the best person for this opportunity? Like what came up in that conversation that added to, Erik is the guy, I want him, I've been trying to find you, are you the one? Like that's a lot of effort and energy for this type of magnitude of opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not exactly certain. I don't want to speak on his behalf. I will say this. The job is essentially running a venue.
Got it.
That hosts live events. I ran multiple venues in the nation's capital for over a decade.
Okay.
I had also just been involved in a startup with the XFL. And so building something from the ground up.
Got it.
I'm a lawyer by training. I have pretty varied, but not to sound immodest, but significant business experience. Mm-hmm. And I think he also going back to the branding, I like to believe that my brand out there, whether it was the Military Bowl or around Washington, D.C. or what have you, is the type of brand that a company like his would have wanted to be associated with. Yes. I hope to believe that I'm known as someone who's intelligent, operates with integrity, is going to be straight up and above board, wants to motivate other people, wants to make certain that we serve our fans or our clients or whoever those may be, right, to meet and exceed their expectations. All of these kinds of things that I have poured into everything that I do professionally over the last 30 years or so, right. I hope have been speaking for me. And I think they were speaking to him. And the people that he called to inquire about me reinforced those things for me. And I think that's what kind of started. I had the professional experience. I had hopefully the personality, mm-hmm, and also the reputation I think that he thought was worthy of at least having a conversation to figure out whether or not this made sense.
That is it. Reputation, experience, skills, impact that you made with him and others along the way. So when you got the opportunity and you accepted it, obviously, you mentioned it had been closed. The track had been closed for 10 years prior.
Yeah.
So that was go ahead.
Well, they had built the track in 2001.
Okay.
With the understanding that it sounds trite, but if you build it, they will come.
Yes.
And the they would be the highest level of competition, which is the NASCAR Cup Series.
Right.
But for some reason, the track operated for 10 years between 2001 and 2011, mm-hmm, at the lower circuits, at the Xfinity level and the Camping World Truck Series level. Okay. And hosted some IndyCar races, but never could secure a Cup race.
Got it.
And so after 10 years of trying unsuccessfully, they closed it down and stopped the bleeding. Okay. And it wasn't until NASCAR brought its end of the year Champions Week to Nashville, mm-hmm, in December of 2019 that I think the powers that be all got together and went, why haven't we been in this market with a Cup Series race since 1984? This doesn't really make any sense. They just had 300,000 people here in Nashville to watch the NFL draft, right, literally to watch big men walk across the stage, not to play football or do anything like that.
Right.
This is a town we need to be in. And the quickest way to get that done was to reopen the Superspeedway.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Now, did you know at the time, Erik, that you were the first African-American president? I'm just curious.
No, I knew before I accepted the job because in our last conversation in person, which was in Nashville, we were sitting in the Hermitage Hotel having dinner, Mike, yes, and I. Yes. And he said, and if you decide that you want to move forward with this, you will be the first person who looks like you to have this role in NASCAR. What
was that moment like? I'm just curious. At that time when he said that, what went through your mind?
I don't know. I mean, we don't set out to be pioneers in our careers,
that's
right?
Right.
You set out to find and seek out opportunities where you can be successful. You can bring what you do and what you're, right, good at to the table for the benefit of the organization and yourself. I thought it interesting. I made a bunch of phone calls to people who are mentors of mine, some kind of mostly in the sports business, and said, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. I wanted to have an understanding of how hard it might be in terms of, the headwinds I might encounter in doing it. So I had some conversations. One was with a mentor of mine named Max Siegel. Max happens to be the president and CEO of USA Track and Field, but also runs a racing team, a developmental racing team for the Drive for Diversity program for NASCAR. Max has been involved with NASCAR for over 20 years. And so I talked to him and he was encouraging. And then I talked to a young man named Brandon Thompson, who's vice president of DE&I for NASCAR and happens to be my frat brother, and had real conversation with him. He had interned at my track when he was an intern, and he's from Nashville. And so the combination of talking to those guys and other mentors of mine and saying, let's break down the pros and cons of me doing this. Does this help me get closer to where I want to be? Is this going to be the kind of experience that I can build upon? Can I be successful in this? And the answers kept coming back. Yes, we think you can do it. You've got the temperament, you've got the experience, you've got the knowledge, you've got the personality. And this company seems like the type of company that will support you in order to be successful.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Big fan of Nashville. By the way, I spent 2 years there. Went to B school at Vandy, so I'm very familiar with the city, and I love the city.
Know it.
Oh, I live right off of West End at Ackland Park. Yeah, right down the street from the campus. So, all right. So, Erik, what was the first big tentpole event after you accepted the job? I understand it has something to do with Father's Day. Can you just talk about it, please? Because it's such a fascinating story, an amazing story.
Well, it's interesting. So our facility is a NASCAR track, but we sit on 650 plus acres. And so part of the vision, a big part of the vision for what we're going to do there is obviously make certain that the track can host NASCAR weekends, as we call them, because we have 3 races during a weekend. And do that very successfully, but also host all manner of other events. And so the first event that we did when we reopened was a drive-through animatronic dinosaur event called Jurassic Quest in November of 2020. And I did this on purpose. I wanted to make certain, even though the track wasn't technically open, I wanted to make certain that we were sending a signal to all of Middle Tennessee that you will come here to see races. You will come here to see stock car races. You will come here to see motorsports, but we are also going to host other events, family-friendly events, things that you should look forward to being entertained here at this track. And so we did that in November of 20. And then our NASCAR weekend, which we were all pushing towards, was June 18th through the 20th of 2021. And June 20th was Father's Day. And that was when the Ally 400, our Cup Series race, happened in front of a sold out crowd.
Wow. All right. So I love the Jurassic idea. I love just really planting your seeds in the community first, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You have to put butts in the seats, sell popcorn, families, really engage the people to want to come back and understand that this is a community in Middle Tennessee that you're going to see many events, but you're going to be entertained, you're going to be excited. And so I love that strategy. And then for the weekend, for the Father's Day weekend, June, you said 18th through the 20th?
Yep, last year that was 18th through the 20th.
So when that manifested itself and it happened successfully, I'm sure, what was that feeling like for you and your team, and especially considering, the track had been closed for many years, you were novel to the industry and to the sport, and also to the community. What was that feeling like when that happened?
It's almost hard to describe it.
All right.
There had been a lot of speculation about our ability to be successful at that track.
Why is that? I'm just curious why.
Well, there were some detractors inside the sport who thought that our track, because it's concrete, the racing there in, between 01 and 11, they thought had not been that compelling.
Okay.
That in NASCAR, like any race, what you want to see is what they call side-by-side racing. Okay. Right? You don't want to have what they call follow the leader racing, which is one person or one car out in front and everybody else kind of following around. That's boring. And so the accusations were that our racing back in the early part of the 2000s had been that follow the leader racing. So there was a lot of concern about whether the actual competition on the track would be good. Okay. The other thing was that there is a historic track in Nashville, literally about 10 minutes outside the city, called Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, that had hosted NASCAR Cup Series racing from 58 till 84. And a lot of people, and it's a short track, we're a super speedway, they're a short track. There are a lot of people who really thought, because of nostalgia and other things, that should be the track that NASCAR should revive and bring racing back to. Wow. So we had some headwinds inside the sport about whether or not we're going to be successful. And the place has sat empty for 10 years.
Yes.
And so I have to tell you the most satisfying thing every day was getting in my golf cart, going out and talking to our fans, many of whom came in on Wednesday in their RVs and their trailers and stayed until Monday, and going and talking to those people and meeting them and hearing so many people thank me for bringing, and the team obviously, for bringing NASCAR back to Nashville. And seeing the smiles on their faces. And then after that, all of the accolades that we received inside the sport and outside the sport for making the place look beautiful. The racing was great. People had a wonderful time. It was to succeed under those circumstances when there are so many folks saying you won't, brings a special kind of satisfaction.
Oh man, I can even envision. I'm embarrassed to say I've never been to a NASCAR race.
We're gonna fix that.
No, it's already fixed. I'm coming there. So it's interesting because I love the idea of the sport. I love the power of man and machine on the tracks, and I mean we all love fast, right?
Everybody loves fast.
As humans, we love fast, but I've just never taken the time for many reasons. But I think also you being there in Nashville is definitely going to open up the door for more diverse communities, which I want to talk a little bit more about as well. Because again, sometimes we think about certain sports or communities and we have perceptions and stereotypes, right? And like, what does a NASCAR fan look like? And do they include people like us? And I'm sure you've seen the contrary, and you by being there is a testament. Can you just talk about the diverse community of NASCAR, not only in Nashville, but I'm sure you traveled, whether it's in Carolina or some of the other tracks, the diversity of the sport with respect to not only the men behind the machine, but also the patrons in the stands?
Yeah, NASCAR, like any other business in this country, especially one that relies on the general public and on fans, is looking to make certain that we're growing our audience, that we're diversifying that audience, and that we're making certain that everyone understands that they are welcome at our track. They are welcome in our sport. And so there have been some things in the past that I think for many of us have been hard stops that have caused us not to consider becoming fans of the sport, in particular the Confederate flag. And as I like to say, I think that was a stop sign for people of color and people of conscience, that they would not bring spend their money and time at a NASCAR track if that symbol was going to be allowed as it was in the past. But I will also tell you that first race I went to in October of 2019 in Dover, the fan zone, the pits, the grandstands were all more brown and female, younger than I ever anticipated.
Interesting.
And so I do think what you said in the lead into that question is exactly right. We have these perceptions of various things, various sports, various companies, various industries that sometimes hold weight, but oftentimes are not nearly as bad as we think. And thanks to Steve Phelps and the France family and all the execs at NASCAR, we are moving very diligently and intentionally to ensure that we're inviting everyone who loves fast and who's interested in our sport to come experience it. And it's a big part of what I'm focused on in Nashville in particular, because of Nashville's promise, both as a destination, but also as a marketplace where I think we can have some success and had some success last year in diversifying that audience and reaching out to everyone.
Oh man, I love this conversation. And again, because it's such a sport that a lot of times is not top of mind in the broader community. Again, I'm maybe totally wrong with that. Maybe in my community, but let me take a step back. The sport of racing cars is very familiar to everyone. Sure. The sport of racing. And I think that people, when they experience a NASCAR event, from what I've seen, it will walk away with a certain feeling of being exalted and energized and like, wow, like these guys, like what's the average mile per hour these cars are actually driving, Erik?
It depends on the length of the track. At our track, you're going to see speeds in excess of 160 miles an hour.
All right, that's crazy.
And the thing I tell people, man, is you don't have most people don't have an understanding for what these men and women do behind the wheel, how special it is.
All right, let's talk about it.
Imagine you're in a car, a race car, doesn't have a second seat. You're in a cage. You've got a helmet on. You're locked into this thing we call a Hans device, which holds your head so that you don't suffer whiplash if you crash and break your neck. You have a rear view mirror. You have no side mirrors. There's a man or a woman a couple hundred yards away on top of a tower with binoculars telling you whether you can move safely to the right or left, up or down on the track, telling you whether or not there's a crash in front of you or behind you, telling you whether or not someone is gaining on you behind you or whether you're gaining in the way that you need to on the leaders in front of you. You're on that track, which if it's our track is 1.33 miles with a 14-degree banking, and you're there with 39 other cars also going 160 plus miles an hour, 6 inches away from you on all 4 sides. All it takes is for you to oversteer a little to the right or to the left, and that could mean disaster for you and the other competitors on the track. My favorite story to tell people is last year during, I think it was at Daytona, Bubba Wallace was racing. He's in what we call the low groove, which is down towards the apron on the lower part of the track. Okay. There's an accident in front of him. A car gets airborne and is flipping sideways in the air towards his car. He doesn't freak out, knowing that if that car lands in his windshield, that could kill him. What he does is this, and he avoids it. It goes by him. When I tell you it looked like a video game, I am not exaggerating at all. And to have that level of poise and calm under those circumstances, when your heart should be beating out of your chest and your wits should leave you, says everything you need to know about the men and women who engage in this sport from a driver perspective. To be able to see that level of excellence in any sport or pursuit is something we should all be interested in. And I'm trying to make certain more people can be interested in it and have the opportunity to witness it, because it's not the same at the track as it is watching on television. You don't get that roar and rumble when you're sitting at home that you can feel in your chest when you're there at the track.
Wow. All right. I'm coming to Nashville. All right. So the roar and rumble of your professional career and your career track and the level of excellence that you've had. Let's just talk more about why we are having this conversation on this platform and the importance of amplifying the value of people who are more seasoned in their career, have the experience. Generationally, obviously right in the middle, Gen X, or even boomers, even millennials, like anyone that reach a certain level in their career, and not only reach a certain level in their career and age, Erik, but also maybe going through some sort of quandary, right? Or feeling stuck. Can you just talk about the power of being in this season of our lives and careers and how this is actually a great opportunity for us to thrive, just based on some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
Man, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day, a friend who's probably, one of our contemporaries in terms of our age range. And I said, I feel like I'm at the height of my powers, right? I tell people I love this job that I'm doing now. I love the challenge of it. I love Nashville. I love the sport. I love the idea of bringing new people to it. Mm-hmm. But it is not without challenge, right? I'm someone from outside the industry and outside the marketplace, trying to shake things up, trying to marry tradition with innovation. Right. And as you can imagine, there can be some resistance to that, right? In my 30s, I probably would not have had the patience necessary or the finesse necessary to do this job in the way that it needs to be done. It took those trials and tribulations. It took the failures. It took the self-reflection. It took the growth and the maturity of my professional path up until now to put me in a position that I think allows me to be successful in this opportunity now and in other opportunities, in the past and maybe in the future, because of that maturation, because of that understanding, because of the confidence of knowing what you can do, of knowing that you've seen hard things, done them successfully, of knowing that you've managed that problem employee before, that you've built that team despite the challenges or the attrition on the team. You've replaced people, you've pushed things in the right direction, you steered the boat, away from the rocks. Those kinds of things, that comes with time. That comes with experience. It comes with age.
Yes.
Now, there are a few of us who are out there that have the good fortune of maybe accumulating that wisdom and those experiences, 10 years, 20 years earlier in our careers, and God bless those folks.
Yes, definitely.
But for most of us, it takes more time. And it's especially important for our generation because we get sandwiched. We sit between two huge population kind of growths. Baby boomers, our parents, and the millennials, our kids.
Yes.
Right. And the boomers don't want to leave the corner office, and the millennials want to get to it and run right past us as quick as they can. And so I think the power in our generation is being able to be that bridge between those two generations. We're not digital natives necessarily, but it's been in our lives long enough that we understand it.
Right.
Right. So we don't have the fear that the boomers may have to the level of change, the exponential change that has happened, in life and in the professional setting and all of that. And I think there's some power in that as well, being able to kind of understand the old and the new.
Yes.
But the seasoning is so important, man. And I feel so empowered by it. By the things that I've seen. Yeah, I wish I had certain these opportunities 10 years ago, but I'm happy I have them now, and that I have the accumulated wisdom of those years spent toiling in the vineyards, as they say.
I love what you're saying, and again, it's reinforcing the movement that I'm trying to build. Not by myself, with people like you and the people that are watching this. Is really, amplifying the power of being in that middle, but also the power of age inclusion, being seasoned, but also being younger as well. Because you did speak to, there are a lot of great individuals who may happen to be millennials or even Gen Z. They're doing great things. And I'm sure someone in your position, Erik, you have probably, and I'm making a big assumption, but knowing you, have mentored a lot of people that are younger than you and been in a position of power where you can influence, but also receive mentorship from people who happen to be younger than you as well. Reverse mentorship, which is very, very valuable. Would you say that the people on your team, are they pretty much a tapestry of ages, would you say? Young, older, or even not only the team, but the people you interact with that you can influence?
Yeah, I mean, our team tends to be a bit younger, but
okay.
In our industry, certainly there is a tapestry, whether it's our sponsors or our broadcast partners, or those that we deal with at the sanctioning body at NASCAR or other colleagues around inside our Speedway Motorsports company. So, and look, I think you are missing something if you are building an entity and an organization that relies on its lifeblood by serving a public. You're doing yourself a disservice if your organization doesn't in many ways look like the public you're serving, and certainly doesn't have an understanding of that public that you're serving. So you can't just be one thing. And
right.
And I think that's vitally important that we have diversity of viewpoints, of experiences, and not just in the checkbox ways that we think about diversity, but true diversity through and through. I think only makes organizations and companies stronger.
Definitely makes stronger. True diversity, both age, background, ethnic, gender. True diversity makes it stronger. Yep. So we talked. First of all, I can talk about this stuff for hours with you, but we don't have hours. I mean, this has been the most fascinating conversations, not only because I'm empowered, I'm inspired by the work that you're doing, not only as a fellow brother, as someone that's been seasoned, but also someone that is just doing great work in an industry, in a sport that's creating value. And, whether you are the first or the last, just really making an impact is what really matters. But we talked about brand earlier, and Erik, I can't leave this conversation without one final question to get more into your personality. And for those individuals who know my brand, know that this is a question I like to ask everyone that I happen to interview or even just engage with. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Erik, if there was a song that would play every time you walk down the street or enter a room or enter a race car and drive off in the sunset that perfectly fits you, your personality, and the brand of Erik A. Moses? What would that be? What would be your own personal theme song?
Well, I love this. And it already is my theme song. Jay-Z public service announcement. I love the way it starts and I love the way it finishes. Starts off with, allow me to reintroduce myself, right? Given the way that my career has gone, I've done different kinds of things where I've gone into places and spaces where I have to establish myself each time. That's very fitting. So allow me to reintroduce myself. And then at the end, it says, either love me or leave me alone.
I love the way you position it. So allow me to reintroduce you, Erik A. Moses, president of Nashville Superspeedway, Fabulous Over 40. Erik, this has been a blast, man. It's been an honor. This has been fascinating, educational, and I'm sure the audience has enjoyed this as well. Please let everyone know that's watching, that's listening, because we're recording this for a podcast later on as well on Gen X Amplified, for those of you who are wondering. But please let everyone know how they can continue to follow you and your journey and the great things that you're doing in Middle Tennessee.
Well, thanks. At Nashville, SSPREZ, at Nashville SSPrez on Instagram and Twitter. But let me take the opportunity to really congratulate you on what you're doing, on the movement that you are trying to put forward. I think it's needed and necessary, and I just admire everything that you're doing here. Because it's important. Now is kind of our time, and we need to figure out how to make the most of it. And more importantly, we need to figure out how to help each other make the most of it. You know, I want to see you succeed and others like us succeed, and frankly, everybody succeed. And more of us have to have that mindset. And I think you're helping to push that forward. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I'm honored and thank you. Thank you for helping me create this movement, Erik. Without you, there will be no Fabulous Over 40 and no Mid-Career Mastery and the full community. So thank you for spending time with me. Thank you, everyone who have been watching and listening to this. I truly appreciate it. Erik, thank you so much for spending time with me and our community, man.
Appreciate it, bro.
Yes. That was Erik Moses, president of Nashville Superspeedway. Wow. So many great things I didn't even know about NASCAR. A lot of things I learned for the first time about NASCAR, but more than that, a lot of things and a lot of gems that I learned about Erik. Once again, Erik is such a phenomenal leader. And again, it is very notable. He is the first African-American track president of a NASCAR track. But more than that, Erik is just a phenomenal leader, and he shared so many nuggets about his professional story, about nurturing relationships, about bridging the gaps, building bridges as a Gen Xer, as someone who's 40 plus and leading in this multi-generational workforce. So glad to have that conversation with Erik, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you did, please make sure you share this podcast. Actually, you can go over to adrianporter.com/065 for episode 65. And you can also share the show notes. Please share on LinkedIn, share on Twitter, or whatever is your platform of choice. Once again, thank you for joining me and Erik for that special Fabulous Over 40 Fireside Chat edition of Gen X Amplified, the podcast dedicated to you, the powerful, the fabulous, and the exceptional generation between those brilliant boomers and those magnificent millennials. Take care.